For anyone out there preparing for competitive exams, mastering this specific dynamic is just absolutely non-negotiable. I mean, it's the engine of the entire political system.
No, 100%. And look, we know your syllabus is a mountain and syllabus burnout is a very real thing.
So consider this deep dive your targeted study guide. We've bypassed all the random internet noise and went straight to the reliable sources.
The heavy hitters.
Exactly. Standard textbooks, NRCERT publications, official Government of India portals, and of course the actual frameworks from the Indian Parliament. Our mission today is to dissect this high-yield topic so the actual mechanics make sense, rather than just leaving you with, a giant list of numbers to memorize.
Which is the biggest mistake students make, honestly. They try to memorize every single provision in total isolation.
Oh, I've been there. It's impossible.
Right. To master this massive topic, you really just need a mental map with 3 specific coordinates. The Constitution basically divides the center-state relationship into 3 distinct dimensions: legislative, administrative, and financial.
Okay, so if we break that down in plain English, it's who gets to make the rules, who actually enforces those rules on the street, and who pays for the entire operation.
That is a perfect summary. And for the exam, you need to anchor those 3 dimensions to 3 distinct sets of articles.
Right. Let's give them the numbers.
So legislative relations cover Articles 245 to 255.
Okay, 245 to 255.
Then administrative relations span 256 to 263.
Got it.
And finally, financial relations encompass 268 to 293.
Okay, setting up those buckets right away gives us like a mental filing cabinet to organize all the details we're about to unpack. So let's start with the foundation, which is the rule makers.
Right. So the cornerstone of legislative relations is the 7th schedule of the Constitution. It distributes the power to make laws into 3 separate lists.
Okay.
First up is the Union List. This has roughly 100 subjects, and Parliament has exclusive power here. We are talking about things like defense, foreign affairs, banking, currency, atomic energy.
I mean, the logic there is pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah.
A unified nation obviously requires a single military strategy and a single currency.
Exactly.
You literally cannot have different states setting their own interest rates or printing their own money. The economy would just instantly collapse.
Yeah, it would be total chaos. So then we have the state list, which has about 61 subjects. Here, state legislatures have the primary authority over issues that are inherently local in nature.
So what kind of issues?
Think of the local police force, public health, sanitation, agriculture, local government.
Okay, makes sense. And the third list?
The third is the concurrent list, with around 52 subjects, things like criminal law, marriage and divorce, education, forests. On this list, both the center and the states are allowed to legislate.
Right. And I actually like to visualize this whole thing like a household to keep it straight for an exam.
Oh, I like that. Let's hear it.
So the union list is like the overarching family budget and home security. The parents handle that exclusively.
Sure.
The state list represents daily chores in the kids' bedrooms. They have autonomy over how they organize their own space.
Right, their own little domain.
But the concurrent list is like the family deciding what to watch on the living room TV on a Friday night. It's a shared space where everyone gets a say.
That analogy actually captures the daily operational reality really well. But of course, as with any shared space or any family TV night, there are inevitably disagreements.
Exactly. Like if a state passes an education policy on the concurrent list and then Parliament passes a contradictory national education policy, someone has to yield.
Right.
The Constitution must have some kind of built-in tiebreaker mechanism to prevent total legislative gridlock.
It does, and it heavily, heavily favors New Delhi. Article 254 dictates that in the event of a direct conflict between a central law and a state law on a concurrent subject, the central law prevails.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, the center essentially holds the remote control for that Friday night movie.
But wait, examiners love to test the exceptions, right?
But they do.
There has to be some weird scenario where the state law manages to survive despite conflicting with the central law.
There is one crucial exception. If the state law on a concurrent subject was specifically reserved for the consideration of the president before it was enacted, and it actually received the president's formal assent, then that state law prevails within that specific state, despite the central law.
Oh, interesting. So if the state escalates the issue to the highest constitutional office and secures a sign-off, they basically earn an exemption.
Exactly.
Though knowing how the Constitution is structured, I would bet Parliament can still find a way to override it later.
Oh, they absolutely can.
Right.
Parliament can simply enact a brand new law on the exact same subject to override that specific state law.
Of course they can.
Right. And to further cement this strong center design, just look at Article 248. It handles what we call residuary powers.
Residuary meaning like the leftovers.
Exactly. If a completely novel subject emerges that the framers couldn't have possibly predicted back in the day, like cybersecurity or artificial intelligence, the power to legislate on it automatically defaults to the center.
The default setting is always the union. But wait, what about the state list itself? You mentioned the states have primary authority there.
They do, generally.
But under what specific circumstances can Parliament reach right past the state government and legislate on a state subject like agriculture or public order?
Okay, this is key. There are 5 extraordinary scenarios where Parliament steps directly into the state field. And I'm telling you, they appear constantly in exam questions.
All right, listeners, pen and paper ready. What's the first one?
The first is national interest, under Article 249. If the Rajya Sabha passes a resolution with a 2/3 majority declaring it necessary, Parliament can just go ahead and legislate on a state subject.
Okay, so if I'm studying this, I'm thinking of the Rajya Sabha as the Council of States. So if 2/3 of that chamber agrees, the states are essentially waiving their own rights, right? They're giving the center a mandate to intervene.
That is the exact fundamental logic.
Got it. What's number 2?
The second scenario is during a national emergency under Article 250.
Oh, sure.
Once an emergency is declared, the entire federal structure temporarily transforms into a unitary one. That gives Parliament blanket power over the entire state list.
Because in a severe national crisis, like a war or something, you literally cannot afford jurisdictional disputes. You need swift, unified action across all the borders.
Precisely. Third is the state's request under Article 252.
Okay, wait, the states ask for it?
Yeah. If 2 or more states formally ask Parliament to legislate on a state subject for them, Parliament can oblige. It basically allows states to voluntarily pool their legislative needs so they can create uniform laws across their specific borders.
And presumably that law only applies to the states that asked for it, right?
Ah.
Though I guess other states could choose to adopt it later if they wanted.
Correct. Okay, fourth is Article 253, which covers implementing international treaties.
Ah,
The center can legislate on any state subject if it is required to uphold an international obligation or convention.
right, because from the perspective of the global community, India is a single entity. New Delhi cannot just default on, like, an international climate agreement just because one local state refuses to change its industrial regulations.
Exactly. And the fifth and final scenario is President's Rule under Article 356.
Oh, the big one.
Yeah. When a state's constitutional machinery breaks down, its legislature is either suspended or dissolved, and Parliament just assumes its legislative powers directly.
Wow. Okay, so whether it's a national emergency, an international treaty, or a total collapse of the state government, the center has clear constitutional pathways to take over.
Always.
But passing a law in Parliament is really just step one. Someone actually has to enforce it on the streets, collect the fines, manage the bureaucracy.
Which brings us perfectly to the second dimension, administrative relations, found in Articles 256 to 263.
Okay, from making rules to enforcing them.
Right. The baseline rule here is that executive power basically tracks with legislative power. The center executes its own laws, and states execute theirs.
But New Delhi doesn't have some massive parallel federal bureaucracy spanning every single district of India.
No, they don't.
So the central government has to rely pretty heavily on the state governments and the local police to enforce those central laws on the ground.
Which is exactly why the framers included Articles 256 and 257. These articles legally obligate states to use their executive power to ensure compliance with central laws.
Okay.
And they explicitly forbid states from acting in any way that impedes the union's executive authority.
Okay, but I have to wonder about the real-world enforcement mechanism there.
What do you mean?
Well, a legal obligation is nice in theory, but if a state government fiercely opposes a central policy for, political reasons, they might just subtly instruct their police or local magistrates to drag their feet.
Oh, sure, it happens.
Right. New Delhi can issue all the directives at once, but if the regional government just ignores them, what is the actual consequence? Does the center have teeth?
Oh, they have teeth. The consequence is Article 365, which is arguably one of the most potent coercive tools in the entire Constitution.
Really? Article 365.
Yeah. It explicitly states that if a state fails to comply with a central directive, the president can hold that the state government can no longer be carried on in accordance with the Constitution.
Wait, that specific phrasing, that's the legal trigger for president's rule, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Defying a central administrative directive under Article 365 gives the center the absolute legal justification to invoke Article 356.
Wow.
And when president's rule is imposed, the mechanics are severe. The state's elected assemblies are dismissed or suspended, the chief minister and the cabinet are literally ousted from power, and the governor takes over direct day-to-day administration on behalf of the center.
So you essentially lose your democratic mandate over an administrative dispute.
Pretty much.
The threat of dismissal alone must force most states to fall in line immediately. But, managing a massive, incredibly diverse nation cannot just rely on the threat of the stick.
No, it doesn't. The system is fundamentally designed for administrative cooperation, not just coercion.
Okay, where's the carrot?
Well, the Constitution allows the center and states to mutually delegate functions to ease the operational burden. But the most brilliant cooperative design is found in Article 312.
Article 312.
The All India Services, specifically the IAS, the IPS, and the Indian Forest Service.
Ah, yes, the famous steel frame of India. This is just fascinating from an administrative standpoint.
You really...
Because you have these officers who are recruited, fiercely examined, and trained by the central government, but then they spend their careers assigned to specific state cadres.
And they occupy the highest, most sensitive administrative posts in those states. We're talking district magistrates, superintendents of police, chief secretaries.
Right.
They provide a unified standard of elite administrations, and they act as a crucial communication bridge between the state capital and New Delhi.
So you have a permanent bureaucracy that owes its ultimate career trajectory to the center, yet is deeply embedded in the daily machinery of the state.
Exactly.
It essentially ensures that regardless of which political parties are currently in power locally or nationally, the basic administrative pulse of the country remains synchronized.
That's a great way to put it. And beyond personnel, the Constitution builds specific institutions to manage administrative friction.
Like what?
Like Article 262. This establishes tribunals to adjudicate interstate river water disputes.
Oh, that's huge.
Huge. It takes those incredibly complex, highly emotional resource battles completely out of the standard courts. And furthermore, Article 263 provides for an interstate council.
Okay, what does that do?
It allows the president to create a forum to investigate and advise on subjects of common interest before they escalate into full-blown crises.
Well, those institutions are critical because administrative harmony requires massive resources.
Oh, yeah. Everything costs money.
Exactly. The steel frame, the state police forces, the local infrastructure, it all requires funding. So the real tension between New Delhi and the states isn't just about who makes the rules or enforces them.
No.
It ultimately comes down to who holds the purse strings.
Always follow the money. That is financial relations, which are mapped across Articles 268 to 293.
All right, third bucket. Let's do it.
The foundational principle here is a strict division of taxing power, very much like the legislative list we discussed earlier. Parliament taxes the union list, states tax the state list. But the actual collection and distribution of that money is this highly intricate web.
Yeah, let's decode that web, because a student reading the Constitution will literally just see a blur of articles. Why does the Constitution separate the power to levy a tax from the right to actually collect it?
It mostly comes down to economic efficiency versus local administration. So take Article 268, for example.
Okay.
These are taxes levied by the center, like stamp duties on financial documents.
Yeah.
The center sets a uniform rate so the financial markets remain stable nationwide.
Right.
But the states actually collect the tax and keep the revenue. I mean, it is infinitely cheaper and easier for state agencies to collect stamp duties locally than for the center to try and build a massive nationwide collection agency just for that one purpose.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. So the center guarantees national uniformity, preventing, like, a race to the bottom between states. But the state gets the financial benefit and handles the daily logistics.
Exactly. Then you have Article 269, where the center both levies and collects the taxes, like taxes on the interstate sale of goods, but then the entire amount is handed over to the states.
Which prevents individual states from taxing interstate trade independently and just destroying the whole concept of a national free-flowing market.
You nailed it.
But what about the massive revenue pools, like income tax?
That falls under Article 270. These are the central taxes levied and collected by New Delhi, but the massive pool of revenue is shared. The center keeps a portion, and the rest is devolved to the states.
And I imagine the center keeps some specific taxes entirely for itself, right? They wouldn't share everything.
Yes, under Article 271, Parliament can impose surcharges on taxes, and 100% of the revenue from those surcharges goes straight into the center's coffers. It is not shared with the states at all.
Oh, wow. That has to be a major source of friction.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the center can just add a surcharge to an existing tax, effectively shrinking the divisible pool that states rely on while boosting its own budget.
It's a huge point of contention.
And what if a state simply does not have the economic engine to survive, even with its share of the central taxes?
Well, the Constitution provides a safety net through grants and aid. Article 275 mandates statutory grants from the center to states that are genuinely in need of financial assistance.
Okay, statutory grants.
And then Article 282 allows for discretionary grants, where both the center and states can allocate funds for any public purpose, which is often tied to implementing central welfare schemes.
Okay, looking at this entire financial apparatus, Articles 268 through 271, plus the different types of grants, it requires constant calculations. Who determines the exact percentage of the shared taxes? Who decides which state gets how much in statutory grants without it just becoming a massive political favor?
That immense responsibility falls to the Finance Commission, established under Article 280.
Okay, highlight that one.
For a student, this is one of the two most important pillars of financial federalism to understand. The president appoints the Finance Commission every 5 years. It is an independent body that essentially acts as the great financial referee.
Because if the central government just arbitrarily decided how much money to give the states, it would be an absolute political weapon.
A total weapon, yeah.
Yeah.
So the commission dictates the formula for vertical devolution, which is how much of the total central tax pool goes to the states as a whole.
Okay.
And crucially, it also dictates the horizontal distribution, how that state share is divided among the individual states.
How do they even figure that out?
They use very complex metrics: population, geographic area, income, distance.
Right.
It's to ensure poorer states get the support they need while also balancing the demands of high-performing economic states.
Okay, you mentioned two pillars. The Finance Commission is the traditional one. What is the modern pillar?
The 101st Amendment Act of 2016, which brought us the Goods and Services Tax, GST.
Ah, yes. GST.
This fundamentally rewired the entire financial relationship. It replaced a chaotic web of state and central indirect taxes with a single unified system. And it created Article 279, the GST Council.
Getting every single state and the center to agree on tax rates across thousands of individual products sounds like an administrative nightmare.
Got easy.
How does the council actually function without constant gridlock?
Through very deliberate voting math that basically forces cooperation. Decisions in the GST Council require a 3/4 majority, 75%.
Okay.
The center's vote holds a 1/3 weight. The combined states' votes hold a 2/3 weight.
Okay, wait, let me do that math. To hit 75%, neither side can act alone.
Exactly.
The center has 33%, so it cannot dictate terms or force a tax hike by itself. And even if every single state unifies against the center, they only reach 66%. They literally hold veto power over each other.
Which is why GST is often celebrated as this triumph of cooperative federalism. It built a unified national market. But at the same time, it created what we call the GST paradox, which states agreed to surrender a massive amount of their independent historical taxing power to join this council. They essentially traded their fiscal autonomy for the promise of shared revenue.
And when states lose the ability to unilaterally raise money, but they still have the daily obligation to fund local police, public health clinics, and infrastructure, they're going to push back.
Without a doubt.
That built-in structural tension leads us right into the reality of how these rules actually play out in the political arena.
Yeah, the friction points are highly predictable when you actually understand the constitutional design. And examiners love testing these real-world flashpoints because it proves you understand how the theory operates in practice.
Right, so if I'm a state chief minister, my first complaint is probably the governor.
Oh, well, certainly.
Because the governor is appointed by New Delhi but sits as the constitutional head of my state, my loyalties are immediately split.
The governor's office is historically the biggest flashpoint. States very often view governors as political agents of the center.
Especially during elections, right?
Exactly, especially regarding their discretionary power to reserve state bills for the president or their outsized role in forming state governments after a fractured, unclear election.
And we already discussed the ultimate friction point,
Yeah.
the use of Article 356.
Yes. For decades, the center frequently misused president's rule to dismiss state governments run by opposition parties. It was just a blunt political weapon.
Are there other major friction points?
Another major tension is the deployment of central armed police forces into a state without the state government's consent, usually citing a breakdown of public order.
So the center has all these mechanisms to essentially bulldoze state autonomy.
Yeah.
Has the judiciary ever stepped in to level the playing field and protect the states?
Yes. The defining moment for judicial intervention was the S.R. Bolmai case in 1994.
Well, my case.
This is a mandatory piece of case law for your exam. The Supreme Court ruled that the imposition of president's rule is not absolute. It is subject to judicial review.
Meaning the courts can look at why it was invoked.
Exactly. The court can examine the material the president relied upon. If the court finds the center used Article 356 arbitrarily or maliciously, it has the power to strike down the presidential proclamation and actually restore the dismissed state assembly and government.
Wow. That fundamentally changes the risk calculation for the center.
Completely.
You cannot just dismiss a state government on a whim if the Supreme Court can publicly reverse your decision and reinstate your political rivals.
Precisely.
Aside from the courts, have there been structural reforms to proactively ease this tension?
Several high-profile commissions have attempted to smooth things out over the years. In 1969, Tamil Nadu set up the Rajamanar Committee, which proposed stripping the center of much of its power to favor the states.
And let me guess, the center ignored it.
Unsurprisingly, ignored it entirely.
I cannot imagine New Delhi willingly giving up that kind of constitutional authority.
Right. But the Sarkaria Commission in the 1980s was much more balanced and impactful. Sarkaria strongly advised that Article 356 should truly be an emergency measure, an absolute last resort. More importantly, it recommended institutionalizing dialogue. That recommendation directly led to the permanent creation of the Interstate Council in 1990.
So giving the states a formal, constitutionally backed platform to air grievances before they escalate into Supreme Court battles.
Exactly. Later, the Punchy Commission around 2010 focused heavily on the governor's office. They recommended fixed tenures and mandatory consultations with chief ministers before a governor is even appointed, just to reduce that specific, recurring friction.
Okay, let's apply this entire framework to a modern headline so listeners can see how to structure an exam essay.
Sure. Consider the state of Andhra Pradesh post its bifurcation in 2014.
Okay.
They have relentlessly demanded a special financial category status from the center to boost their economy. Under our framework, you immediately classify that as a financial relations dispute, rooted in the mechanisms of grants and aid and resource devolution.
Meanwhile, Andhra Pradesh also has a long-standing, intense dispute with neighboring Telangana over the sharing of the Krishna and Godavari river waters.
And that is an administrative relations dispute, managed under the tribunal mechanisms of Article 262.
Right.
By categorizing the news into the legislative, administrative, and financial buckets, your analysis goes from disorganized commentary to structured, high-scoring exam material.
That is the cheat code we promised. Don't just absorb the daily news file into the constitutional architecture.
Exactly.
We have covered the entire landscape today, so let's lock down the non-negotiable takeaways before exam day.
Okay, anchor your memory to the map. Legislative relations, Articles 245 to 255. Remember the underlying logic of Article 254. In a concurrent list clash, the central law generally wins.
Got it.
Administrative relations, Articles 256 to 263. Understand the coercive threat of Article 365, balanced against the vital steel frame of the All India Services.
Okay.
And financial relations, Articles 268 to 293. Master the dual pillars, the role of the Article 280 Finance Commission and the cooperative math of the GST Council.
The overarching theme is clear. The Constitution operates in a shared space, but it was explicitly engineered with a strong center bias to keep a vast, incredibly diverse nation from fracturing.
It was. Yet the dynamic is constantly evolving, and I will leave you with a final thought to mull over for your essays.
Yes, here.
The original Constitution relied heavily on centralized structures, like the All India Services, to unify the nation from the top down. But as individual states grow more economically powerful and politically assertive, will modern mechanisms like the GST Council, where states literally hold a collective veto over national economic policy, eventually become the primary battlegrounds that force us to redefine what it truly means to be a union of states?
That is the analytical edge that separates a good exam answer from a truly great one. You have the map, you understand the hidden mechanisms behind the rules, and you know how to connect the dots. Best of luck with the studying. You've got this.